Hey, just a quick note to say thank you for joining me on this episode. If this is your first time or you're a regular listener, please take a minute and rate the show on your chosen platform. A short review helps every show to be more visible to new listeners and provides them with value. So, thank you for being here and for helping out. Thank you.
My dad was lifelong military, but he was an amateur chef and amateur photographer. He built the house we lived in. I could tell crazy stories about my father. He's no longer around, but when I was finishing FAC, I asked my mom, I said, hey, if you asked Dad if he was creative, would he say he was? She was like, oh, no, he wasn't, he wouldn't say that. I said, if you asked Dad, could he figure anything out? She'd say, oh, yeah, he could figure anything out. So the idea of creativity scares people. The idea of artist scares people. They're charged words. They're like, oh, those are special things for special people. Or for my dad, it would have been like, oh, were you calling me gay, right? And he had that. But if you can figure things out, that's a level of creativity. So we're all weird. We're all creative.
Welcome to the Daring Creativity Podcast, a show about daring to forever explore creativity that isn't about chasing shiny perfection. It's about showing up with all your doubts and imperfections and making them count. It's about becoming more of who you already are. My name is Radim Malinic. I'm a designer, author, and eternally curious human being. I'm talking to a broad range of guests who share their stories of small actions that sparked lifetime discoveries, taking one step towards the thing that made them feel most alive. Let me begin this episode with a question. Are you ready to discover what happens when you dare to create? Today I'm talking with James Victore, an artist, author and activist who teaches people how to illuminate their individual gifts in order to achieve personal greatness. In our conversation, to celebrate the release of his latest book, Hey Weirdo, we explore his evolution from pleasing clients to finding clients who appreciate his authentic voice, learning that creativity's job is to disrupt. James now coaches frustrated creative adults to express what's truly in their hearts, rather than succumbing to creative constipation. In this conversation, key themes include the difference between being weird versus seeming weird, the importance of self-love in creative expression, and why perfectionism is simply a tool for self-sabotage. James also emphasizes that creativity requires a business acumen, because a starving artist is just an artist who doesn't know they're in business. It's my pleasure to welcome James Victore. Hey James, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I am groovy, Radim. It's great to be here. I appreciate you asking me. Thank you.
I think you're like a man who doesn't need an introduction, yet there might be a couple of people listening to this and say, who is James Victore?
I am what you call a recovering graphic designer, meaning I started my career years ago as a commercial graphic designer. And I realized I'm a pretty good one, meaning I can get my work into museums around the world. I've had 2 shows at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. But then when you hit your 30s and your 40s and you become an adult designer, you realize that I'm a racehorse. If you want to win races, hire me. But what most clients want to do is put an apple cart behind this racehorse. And I'm like, nah. So I realize I'm a pretty good graphic designer, but I'm a much better teacher. And I taught at the School of Visual Arts in New York for almost 18 years. And now I teach and coach and mentor frustrated creative adults and help them do the work that's in their hearts.
I remember your story about MoMA, and I think there was a client story that you were arguing about some detail in the project. And you were like, dude, you're arguing about blue color or the font, and I'm in a MoMA. What is the point of this conversation?
My first poster I created because I had to make comment. I realized that freedom of the press belongs to those who own a press. I didn't own a press, but I was a graphic designer and I knew printers. And a situation came where it was the 500th anniversary of the celebration of the quote unquote discovery of America. And I went to school, I learned about Sacagawea, and I learned about the Pilgrims, and I learned all the bullshit and the Thanksgiving story, the whitewashed version. But I also read some books and some history, and I learned about the continued genocide in this country of the Native Americans from Plymouth Rock to today. And I wanted to make a comment. There was a big parade being planned and parties in New York City, and they usually go down Fifth Avenue and they stop at Columbus Circle. So I created a poster. We printed 5,000 of them, and I got them put up professionally. And professionally means you talk to your printer and you say, hey, how do I get these up on the street? You know, like movie posters and stuff. And they said, oh, there's a whole bunch of, there's 2 different Greek companies. And what you do is you pay them, and I know the guy's name, you pay them. And then when we're done printing these, we take boxes and we bring them to Lincoln Center at night, and we leave them at the back door. And they'll come and they'll pick them up, and the next morning they'll show up all over the city of New York. So it was like legal, illegal postering. So my poster was up next to Calvin Klein advertising posters and movie posters, and it was fantastic. And the day before the parade, like I'd seen them up all over New York. And the day before the parade, the studio I was working out of the time I was just working at a friend's studio, and it was the 11th floor of Carnegie Hall, which was like a hop and a skip away from Columbus Circle. So I took my lunch and I went and sat in Columbus Circle and was just like across the street watching, looking at my posters and having a sandwich, right? And I watched the police pull up, and they get out of the car and they open up the trunk and they pull out what looks to be like a mop, with those hairy mops, but it didn't have the hairy parts on it. It was just metal on the end. And it was a scraper. And they scraped my posters off the wall. They didn't touch the movie posters on the left of mine or the advertising posters on the right. They just scraped mine down. And I didn't have the balls to ask them why. Hey, what are you doing to my poster? I paid to have that shit put up there. So yeah, I love making the work that's in my heart, and I have to make work that entertains, educates, delights, or pisses people off. I need and like that strong emotion. Otherwise, I could just not have an opinion and do commercial work and get paid and, and have a house and have a summer house and have all the bullshit and lead a completely boring life. And my graphic design will have meant nothing.
How old were you when you did those posters?
I was just 30.
Wow.
I was maybe 29 or 30.
With your sandwich, sat there watching all of this happen, especially with the police showing up, did you feel a bit scared, or were you like, oh, let's see what happens?
I was at a safe distance. I sign all my posters, so, my signature's been on it. And people have said, hey, have you ever gotten arrested? And I'm like, you know what? I think I haven't tried hard enough.
I need to congratulate you on your new book, because in a way I was going to say, let's say hello to James and say, hey, weirdo.
No, don't, because I fucking hate that word. There's a whole story behind that. That's where the book comes from, right? It's like I've realized, listen, my book previous to this was called Feck Perfection. And I didn't realize I was a perfectionist until I was writing that book. And that book cured me. I am so much better at letting things go now, especially in my work. And I didn't really realize how much of a weirdo I was and how much I was hiding from that part of me until I put together, hey, weirdo. But I'm not comfortable with that word. I want to be normal. I want to fit in. I want to be liked, just like everybody else. But yeah, I think I'm a tad weird.
I will defend you on the fact that you don't want to be called, weirdo, but you're one of a kind. You're the odd one out in a very good way, just like everybody else is the odd one out. Like we are, on the journey of actually self-acceptance, like where we've started in this, in this world, trying to find our feet. It's the last thing you want to be in school, like being a weirdo, like being called a weirdo, because that's going to fuck you up in terms of, your social presence, social sort of acceptance. But I think the older we grow, the more eccentric we go, and we go, you know what, this is me, take it or leave it. What I've learned recently is not what it is how people see it. It's not who you are, it's how people see you. So you could be perfectly fine and just strange to your surroundings, or you can be just a little bit odd. totally weird to your surroundings. So what's your journey into creativity? Like, how do we go from the beginnings to now to writing this book?
I was born to do this job. I was just born to do this job. And what I've done is, the short story is that I've done a very good job of listening to that. I've done a fairly good job of listening to that. I've strayed a number of times. So in Hey Weirdo, I tell my story, the long version. And in the book, there are 8 really strong, compelling interviews with high-end professionals. And all of my interviews with them started with, what made you weird as a kid? And in the book, there were some early copies that I sent around to some friends, and they all said the same thing. They said, James, there's one thing missing. I was like, what? They said, what made you weird as a kid? I'm like, oh shit, I didn't tell my story. So I tell the story, and it goes like this. When I was a kid, I have a memory, and it's stuck with me my entire life. And the memory is of a pool of melted crayons on a hot cement porch, right? So it's this beautiful melange of color. And I've had that memory my entire life. And the funny thing is, besides for the Cooper Black stuff, most of my work strives to recreate that constantly. So it's been this subconscious drive in my work for years. And last couple of years, I had to check that vision. I had to make sure. I think I just conjured that. I made that shit up because it's a pretty good story. But I checked with my mom. So I asked my mom and I said, hey, do you remember a pool of melted crayons on a hot porch? And she said, oh yeah, I remember. And I could tell that she did not remember it as being something beautiful, this expressionism of color. She remembered it as, why did you do that? We don't own this house. Who's going to clean that up? So the thing that moved me as a kid for its beauty also has embedded in it her anger. And that's something that I shoot for still. So I've held on to that. I was the weird kid. I was lucky that I was the third of 3 children. I was the only boy, so I was left alone. I was full of play and joy and fun and love as a kid. I failed. After high school, I failed a lot. I tried university, didn't stick. I tried getting a job, didn't work. So I moved to New York at 19 years old to become an artist, to become a designer. And I went to the School of Visual Arts. It was another school that didn't stick, that didn't work. So I just started working immediately. I was 21. I just started working, and I've been working ever since, basically. But when I started working, I started doing the work that I thought I was getting paid for. I was basically making graphic design look like graphic design, making book jackets look like book jackets. And it's what people still do. I call it making the obvious obviouser, right? Stuff that's completely not interesting. So I kind of strayed from my path. I became, commercial, doing work that just didn't move me. And then I woke up one day and I'm like, fuck this. I've got my own sense of humor, my own way of seeing things, my own sense of color and proportion, right? And typography. And I started putting it in my work, and my clients hated it. My clients fucking hated it. So I had to do, the only smart thing and go out and try to find my clients, the clients who would work with me. Because I think that's a big flaw that most designers do, is they think, okay, I'm a graphic designer. I have to figure out how to be nice to everybody and make everybody happy and make the client happy all the time. I'm like, fuck that, because the person that you have to make happy is you, or else you're going to have a miserable fucking career of placating everybody else. And then you're going to wake up at 30 or 40 and you're going to come to me and say, hey, James, why am I so frustrated? I'm like, well, because you're creatively constipated because you've never expressed yourself. Do you know that, Radin, do you know the opposite of depression? Expression is expression. We become depressed. We literally become depressed because we are creatively constipated, because we've got the job, but the job won't let us actually do what's in our hearts. So we're frustrated creatively because we can't express ourselves. We can't be that weird kid. We can't go back and do those things. We can't have that amount of play and fun and joy we did when we were kids. I loved making a mess when I was kids. I loved working with my hands. When I started as a graphic designer, I was lucky enough that computers were just starting. I started because I wanted to use my hands and make things. Little did I know that I would grow up to be an adult who basically, as a career, most of my time is spent managing some fucking websites. Fucking shoot me.
It does make perfect sense of like how you've come literally the full arc of yourself, being frustrated, things were not sticking, and now you're helping those ones that, again, are in a situation where things are not sticking. So I think it's a perfect circle that you accomplish.
That is pretty much my path. And now what I tried to do is I tried to express myself in the most truest form. I try to play the way that 5-year-old kid who made a mess with crayons did. And I know how hard it is to be a designer, to be an artist, to be creative and have that inside of you. And I want to share that with other people. I went out for a walk with my dog and I bumped into some people in the neighborhood who I hadn't talked to before. And my dog was cute, so people wanted to talk to me. So they said, "Oh, James, what do you do for a living?" I said, "Oh, well, I'm an artist and a writer." They said, and they immediately, they did that fucking thing. They did that thing, which is so beautiful and so amazing. And they said, when I was a kid. And one of them said, when I was a kid, I used to take paper and I would draw out a pattern and then I would cut it with scissors and I would staple it or tape it together and I would and I'd say, "Oh my God, that's so awesome. What do you do now?" And this woman said, "Oh, I run a parking garage." And I'm like, oh, my heart. Our creativity, we don't see it as viable. We don't see it as something valuable. We don't see it as something life affirming, life fucking changing. It's something we have to pass through. It's like it comes out of the fucking Bible, right? You read this passage. Which one is it? I forget what it's called. We read this passage at weddings here in the States traditionally. And it has this line that says, "When I was a child, I played like a child. When I was and now I am a man and I have to put aside my childish things." You putting away your childish things. Let me just grow up and become a fucking mindless drone and a normal person and follow what everybody else is doing until I die a frustrated death. Too early frustrated death.
Here we are, you and I, living like creative life, and neither of us have had some special education. It's more like, how much do you want to be actually following those paper patterns and doing the things that made you really happy? Because at what point do people give up on their thing? Or at what point do they get sort of seduced by the societal easiness? Creativity is never going to be easy. Being an artist is never going to be easy. It's never going to pay as well as running a parking garage or being in finance. But at what point do you hold people accountable saying, "Hey, well, actually, it's lovely that you want to do this or you wanted to do this, but in some way you made that choice of not pursuing your creativity"? Because if the creativity was taught out of us, or we were taught out of creativity in school, there would be no artists.
I think the creativity getting taught out of us, it happens in a number of ways. One is that creativity and being weird, particularly, needs a safe space. And that needs to be either yourself, you need to be the vessel. Like I was pretty fucking protective of my play and my creativity. I wasn't going to give it away. Like I was pretty unshakable, but most people aren't. And they need drama club, or they need that art club, or they need the cool and groovy kids. They need that safe space, right? Because a lot of us, like when I was a kid, I didn't grow up near artists. I didn't know you could do that for a living. That was something talented people did or creative people did. When I was a kid, I was called creative and it wasn't a compliment. It meant I was loud. It meant I was noisy. It meant I talked too much. It meant I talked out of turn, right? And I taught university for, 18 years or more. And I didn't even want creative people in my class because they disrupt, because that's creativity's job. And when you're teaching a class, especially when you're teaching kids, right? You need them to listen. You need to sit down and listen. Follow what's on the board. You want order, you want discipline, and creativity doesn't fucking do that. So we need that safe space because society is constantly wanting us to conform. Even when I was in New York and I was like becoming a cool and groovy designer and trying to figure out my ass from my elbow, and I wanted to do social, cultural, and political posters, and I wanted to do my work, I was around other designers who were completely satisfied doing a high level of mediocre work, a high level of well-paid, shitty work. And they're like, "Man, James, I wish I could just do what you do." I'm like, well, you can. just got to quit your shitty job. Oh no, how am I going to do that? There's a certain amount of brainwashing that happens, or, oh, I would love to quit my job, but my wife, she likes the paycheck. We settle into this bullshit, these lies that we tell ourselves.
I mean, the person you just described was never going to be creative, right?
No, yeah, true. Well, they don't have the fire. It's like Bob Dylan said, you got to serve somebody. It may be the devil or it may be the Lord, but you got to serve somebody, right? You got to choose. And at every moment in your life, like even now, even talking to you, there's moments in the back of my mind, it's going, are you going to say that? Really? You're going to say that out loud, right? In every moment in our lives, we are either shrinking out of fear or growing out of love. I love what I do. I want people riled up. I want people excited about what they do. I want them to see, oh my God, I can do that. Cool. I can be happy and even probably well paid. Awesome. I mean, that money's a big reason why people do or don't become artists, right? Because they're like, well, that starving artist. A starving artist is just a fucking artist that doesn't know they're in business. Learn to fucking be in business. Learn to be in business. It's like, you're gonna be in business. That means you're gonna have to wake up in the morning and you work for a while until lunch. Then you have lunch and then you go back to work and you get a little bit more done, right? Be in business. And you got to keep the books and you got to watch money and you got to do this and this. It's the same fucking thing, except it's for you.
I think one of the ingredients that I think we need as creatives or creative people to make it happen is obsession. It's only you who can give yourself permission to be creative. It's only you who can go out and make it. Like, it's only you who will actually get those doors open. What you mentioned about a person who doesn't want to be in business, you need to know what invoice is in any other profession, regardless. So it's just, I think that's an excuse, because I think we fall into sometimes into this sort of romantic idea of, hey, I'm a creative person, therefore the world should open up for me. And, all I have to do is to show up a piece of artwork that I've created. But we live in ever-changing times where you need to be so much more than just a creative, because I believe creativity is first and foremost verbal. It's your voice. Like, you can actually fire up someone with just giving them an idea of what we actually can do. Obviously, now you can paint pictures with 1,000 words as a prompt, but you can also paint for millions of years. We can actually paint stories and vivid imaginary storytelling with just words. And this is, I think, the expression that you talk about, like, how do you get someone fired up and how do you get someone excited? Because when you express yourself, everything else starts falling into place.
For me, the fun part is introducing people to the idea of being bold, being audacious. People come to me and they're like, well, I make t-shirts and I made a shop, but they're not selling. I'm like, so how often do you talk about it? How often do you show it? In what ways are you talking about it? Where are you talking about it? You gotta, if your excitement breeds excitement. You can't just put up a shop and go, okay, where's the money? Right? Again, it comes down to, even in this conversation, I need to talk about marketing. And marketing is having something to say and saying it again and again and again. I have an opinion. I express it again and again and again. That's my marketing.
We'll be back after a quick break.
This episode is brought to you by Lux Coffee Co., the first creative specialty coffee company building a platform to shine the light on emerging global talent with a mission to make a positive impact on the creative industry and beyond. Lux Coffee Co. offers exceptional coffee sourced from around the world through ethical and sustainable practices, and you can discover the current range of signature blends and single origins, coffee hardware and accessories, along with exceptional apparel at luxcoffee.co.uk. You can use the code PODCAST to get 15% off your first order. It's pretty interesting. I frequent some forums, some places when you say like, hey, just this is what I'm doing. Somebody comes up, like a moderator, and says, hey, thanks for posting this. Love the hustle, I'm like, fuck you, honestly. What do you mean love the hustle? Are we just hanging out as a sort of hungry creatives? Oh, I'm poor and this is life is struggle. I was like, no. What do I get when I open my Instagram? Ads. What do I get? Like, everyone's promoting something in the world of business, but somehow it's kind of viewed as, oh, if you're promoting yourself as an artist or creative, it's like, oh, this is a bit dirty, are you sure you're not? Well, of course it is. Look, this is just, we don't have a business.
That's other people's shit, though. I hate that word hustle. You know, I like the word love, but hustle is frantic. It's frantic. It's craving.
It's not even a hustle. Like, obviously, as you said, marketing saying something, that thing over and over again, because you never know who you might meet. You never know who you might actually change someone's life by what you do, because it's mostly less about a product and more about a connection with another person. Hey, this is what I'm doing. How do we connect? This is the reason why we're having this conversation, because this is how we connected through what we do. Why do you think that there's always this sort of shyness on certain creators? What is it that stops people doing the thing and then becoming frustrated so they need your help?
That's a great question because, when I was a kid, I was shy. I have since learned there is no genetic marker for shyness. I wasn't just born shy. I was told shy. I was shy when I was a kid. And my father used to constantly do that. He says, oh, this is because I was the boy and the baby. He was like, oh, this is Jimmy. He's my shy one. And I'm like, am I shy? I was, okay, I guess I have to be shy, right? It's taken me a long time to kind of get over that. But here, right, I have an 8-year-old daughter and a 10-year-old son. They teach me the most innate and most primal creative drive. And I try to teach everybody this thing. It's so good and it's so strong and it's so easy for us to do when we're kids. Because I've got 2 of them and they're like barnacles. They love me. I'm a single dad with 2 kids. So they're like on me all the time. They love me. But it's just like I'm doing the dishes or I'm trying to do this or I'm trying to get work done. And it's constant. And I want to shut it down. But I'm a good parent and I'm like, okay, guys, listen, I'm doing this. I want to come see what you're doing. Hang on. But it goes like this. And this is something adults need to fucking learn how to do. We need to relearn. We did know it when we were kids. When we were weird, we knew it. We knew how to do this. And it goes like this. Daddy, look at me. Look what I did. That call to be seen and heard and loved is so important. And we need to do that all the time. We need to be seen and heard and loved, or if not loved, appreciated. And that means paid. So we have to learn how to say, hey, look at me. Look what I did. I cannot be shy about my work. I have been shy about my work for too long. Me, fucking James Victore, too shy about my work for too long, and I'm not going to do it anymore. So I was in a tizzy yesterday. I was put into a tailspin yesterday because I'm in this thing of asking, way up over my pay grade. And I asked for something yesterday that I didn't get. The answer was a quick no. And it sent me in. I'm like, wait a minute. No, that's not the answer, right? But I have to get good at, saying, hey, look at me. Look what I can do. Look what I've done. Look what I can do, for you. Then I have to not ruminate and go into depression when the answer is no.
The way you talk about yourself is like James Victore of now versus James Victore from the past. So there's almost like 2 Jimmys, the shy one and Jimmy now. When was the breaking point? Like, when did this thing change? Was there a particular moment, particular sort of realization? Was it gradual?
It was gradual. I was dissatisfied as a strictly commercial designer for a long time. My role as a teacher at the School of Visual Arts taught me so much. My book, Effect Perfection, came from everything I learned when I was teaching at SVA, because I realized I had kids at the time and I had, and then I had my students, and I realized the link between teaching and raising kids. And I realized that so much of what my students were learning in other classes was they were learning the rules. And I'm like, guys, fuck that. There's no fucking, they would come up to me after class and they'd go, Mr. Victore, why do you say the opposite of all of our other teachers? And I'm like, listen, here's your other teachers. Here's me. Find your place. Find your place in the middle. I think they're wrong. I think they're teaching you how to enjoy gray carpets and fluorescent cubicles, or gray cubicles, padded cubicles and fluorescent lighting. I don't want you to like that. I don't want you to learn to enjoy the taste of shit. I want to hop you up on creativity and make you so addicted to that you'll never let go.
You mentioned earlier that when you write in that book, you realize you were perfectionist until then, but your work isn't something, especially if your style isn't exactly something that will strike you as a perfectionism. You're like, it's not like a pixel perfect, beautiful, great, like,
You can be an abstract painter with smears of paint where you could paint with your buttocks on the thing. You're still going to stand back and go, I don't know.
I want to get to the point of what is your definition of perfectionism? What lies behind it?
Sabotage. It's a way, it's a tool we use to stop ourselves. That's it. It's a tool we use to stop ourselves. And it comes from like we were maybe as kids we were competitive or we grew up in a competitive family and we always had to do better. We always had to prove ourselves. So we became perfectionists. I was running one of my live workshops that I do occasionally. I have one coming up in the fall I'm very excited about. But I had a guy, he was a CEO and he'd worked his way up he literally joined this marketing agency, mopping floors, and he became the CEO. Like he was pretty amazing. And he's at this camp, I realized in conversations that he was a double major in college in chemistry and biology, double major, and he runs marathons. And I took him for a walk and we're walking around the property and I forget what it was. Let's say his name was Ken, I think. I don't remember his name. Tim, actually. And we were walking around the property and I said, Tim, tell me something. Yeah. I said, what are you trying to prove? Who are you trying to prove it to? And he just broke down in tears. He just busted down. He didn't know. No one had ever seen or told him that he was enough and he didn't have to constantly fucking prove himself by running marathons and double major and excelling all the time, right? But we do that because there's some proof we need that we're worthy or we have to prove ourselves to somebody else. So we really sabotage our lives. We really tighten down the sphincter and don't allow ourselves to have any fun.
That easily goes to the point what you said earlier about your children. Like they want to be seen, they want to be, acknowledged,
Accepted, yeah.
accepted, acknowledged, well, seen, cut, no, given a hug, like just being reassured. Whereas when that doesn't happen,
yeah, you're constantly searching for it. Like, that's me. I mean, I was brought up in a military household. I'm not saying, daddy never loved me, but it was, you had to work fucking hard for a hug. You had to fucking work hard, right? So that shows up in my work. Look at me. Hey, look at me. Woo, woo, over here, and it's not a bad thing. And I have to intellectually understand that now for myself, that it's not a bad thing, James. I don't have a bad aggressive bone in my body. Like I can say, hey, look at me. I did this work. Yeah, I'm in the Museum of Modern Art, plus the Stedelijk Museum, plus the Louvre, plus, Library of Congress, plus, all these things. I've won all these nice awards. But and actually a lot of people don't know that because I'm not good at, telling them.
I think there's a certain thing about awards that to some people it just doesn't mean anything. When I was writing one of my books, it was like in England, you've got lots of curry houses, Indian restaurant, and they've got walls covered with awards from places you've never heard of. You're like, it's lovely, fellas, but people come here because your food is good. It doesn't matter what award you won. When you talk about Tim and his double majors and the marathons, as you say in your book, the path to self-love is being curious about self-hate.
Yeah, I talk about that in the book in Weirdo because the core of being weird and allowing that to come out, allowing that to come through you is self-love. That's the trigger that turns it on. You have to love yourself and love your creativity so much that you will do what you can to protect it, right? And to get it out into the world. But what's stopping it is self-hate. What's stopping it is doubt and fear. It's that classic story of the Native American grandfather who's talking to his son about two wolves. He says, there are two wolves fighting inside of you. And one is jealousy and anger and frustration and doubt and ignorance and fear. And the other wolf is love and compassion and creativity and empathy. And the son says, which wolf wins? And the old man says, the one you feed. So it's It's that. It's how much do you love yourself? How much what work will you do? I just got off the phone, a sales call with someone who wants to do coaching with me. And he's 50 and he's in tech, and tech just dropped. He's in California, and you cannot be 50 years old and out looking for a job in tech. And he's like swirling in, near depression and blah, 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 blah. That's the thing I have to put through to him is I see you. I see what you're capable of. Let's feed that. How do we focus this thing? Because it's so easy to go into the self-hate, into the, I'm not worthy. My wife doesn't like me because I'm not making money anymore. I'm like, there's no end to that. That'll just keep going, down and down and down. And I think, Radem, it's so funny that you and I, two creative guys who just want to do good work and, get paid for it, that we're talking about fear and doubt and perfectionism and procrastination. And it's hilarious. But those are the things that we have to rein in. We have to control if we want to be creative, if we want that you are at any time in your creative life. I mean, there's a river of energy. There's a river of creativity that wants to flow through you. And you can allow that to flow through you, or you can stand in the way and dam it up. There's this John Lee Hooker song I think it's like from 1938 or something, or 1948, John Lee Hooker song called Boogie Chillin'. And in the beginning, the song says, he says, I heard Papa tell Mama, he said, Mama, you got to let that boy boogie woogie because it's in him and it's got to come out. And he's saying, hey, our son has got this thing. He's got this thing and we cannot squelch it down. It's got to come out. It's got to come out, or he's going to end up in jail, quite frankly. He's going to be creatively frustrated, and then that's going to pour out and piss all over everything around him.
I think you and I would eat ourselves alive if we had a normal life.
Do you know what normal is here in the States? Normal is you're 30 years old or you're 40 years old. You're probably obese. If someone says, hey, how's work? Here's your answer. It's work. Right? You're probably obese. You're probably pre-diabetic. You're probably in a relationship that you're not happy with. You're definitely in a job that you're like, nah, okay, I guess I'll just do this. You're probably going to die relatively early. You're probably going to raise children who are going to do exactly what you're doing. That's normal. I think that is scary. That is scary. But that's normal. It doesn't matter if you you're supposed to, what a stupid idea. You're supposed to like your job? What the fuck is that? What kind of pansy are you that you get to like your job?
You told me earlier that you were born to do it. You were born to do it and you listened to yourself really well to this.
Yeah, I was lucky. I wasn't lucky. I worked fucking hard. I worked hard to stay out of the mix. I worked hard to stay on the edges. I worked hard to be an outsider. I worked hard to be an outsider and get my work seen. Yeah, it's okay. There's this movie, and I used to talk to my students about this when I was at SVA. The movie Lady and the Tramp, the Disney movie, Lady and the Tramp. She's like a beautiful white dog, and she's got these beautiful white dog kids, and she's in a nice home, and she's protected, and they're fed every day. And then there's Tramp, and he's an outdoor dog. He's like lives by his wits, and eats out of the gutter, and and they meet. Right? And I always have this conversation with my students. Would you rather be Lady and have everything taken care of, but you can't go outside? Or would you rather be Tramp, where you are free, you have a free life, and you get to scrap it out on your own and figure out your shit? And that's what the question is.
And what do you get as a common answer?
Oh, whether people say they want to be Tramp and whether they do end up as Tramp is a different thing. I want to be Tramp. Tramp was always my guy. Hell yeah. Scrapper.
I'm trying to piece these things. So on your way to accept who you are and what you do and say, I don't want this boring graphic design stuff, you needed to do this type of work. You needed to do the work that you don't want to do anymore. You wouldn't be where you are today if it wasn't for the jobs you didn't want to do, or found yourself not wanting them to do anymore? Because we all go through that phase of, I think this looks nice, only you realize that there's a whole hierarchy and bureaucracy or whatever behind it. Like the process of doing a good work in a big team, sometimes it's impossible to actually come up with something really good. So we do the shitty jobs only to realize, there's another door, there's another path that I can go on my own. With your students, does anyone come on this path straight, going, I'm going to be me forever? Because what's the longevity? I know, sorry, this is a really shitty, complicated question.
I think it's a great question. I exemplified it earlier in our conversation. It's great to get into the business, like move to New York because I want to be in advertising, right? And I think that's awesome. And it's important to follow that. But I think it's also important to fail. And I think failure teaches us a lot. I knew as a designer, even when I was working in New York, clients would say, okay, we got this great job. We're going to pay you all this money. And, we'd like to see 3 different sketches and then we're going to do revisions. And I'm like, oh, no, I don't do that. I'm going to do one thing and you're going to like it and you'll pay me. I'm like, what? You're going to pay me 3 times? I'll do 3 different concepts. I don't do that. I can come up with 100. I'm that kind of guy. There's these stereotypes, these cliches of how we're supposed to work that it's just universally accepted. They're not true. There's no reason for it, Or I remember working for some huge companies early in my career, and it would be like Friday afternoon, and they'd call and they say, hey, we got some last minute changes and we'd like to see them on Monday. And I'm like, it's Friday. And they're like, oh, we'll give you, a couple $1,000s more. And I'm like, oh, I see how it works. Slavery, right? They like throw more money at you to like bind you to your desk. It's just this weird way of working that it just didn't sit well with me. I wanted to be free. I wanted to be the tramp. I wanted to pick and choose. I love my clients. I love the clients that I still work for, a few commercial clients. But the way I see them is I can see past my client. I can see the audience out there. The audience that's waiting for someone to tell them the truth, someone to speak to them, someone to stop spoon feeding them. I almost got into a row on LinkedIn yesterday because I wrote something on LinkedIn and they wrote back and they said, yes, we're all creative and it's all, and it's all good. I was like, and I looked and I saw where they came from. They came from like some shitty marketing agency that does like fucking crappy shit in the supermarket. And I was like, oh, no, that's dangerous. To think that what you're doing is creativity and it's good. No, and I actually want to write a piece about that now. The people who think they're creative because they're just putting out shit. Like, no, you need some morals and some ethics or some retrospection or introspection to see what you're actually doing, that you think that is good. Good for who? I want to write about, hey, I walked into the supermarket the other day and I saw nothing but shit everywhere. All this look-alike crap, fake Italian mama pasta and, fake this and cereal boxes that look like toys to attract the kids, to force the mom, and the whole kind of all that.
So I'm going to make a great link to one of the books that you did for Do Nourish by Sarah Bayless, because I had her on the show and she said, whenever you go into supermarket, don't trust anything.
Not to go down that rabbit hole too far, but, try not to be too pedantic in front of my kids, but I want them to be smart. So if we have to go and get dishwashing liquid or, laundry liquid, the chemicals that will kill you, that don't need to be there, and they're all dressed up with these wonderful colors and bubbles. Oh my God, the lying involved. And the shit that, there are some neighbors' kids who I won't let in my house. Because as soon as they come into the house, my entire house smells like chemical flowers. I'm like, get that shit out of here. Really? Your bodies are steeping in that. You don't need that stuff. So or garbage bags that smell like lavender because they've infused more chemicals into plastic. Oh, great fucking idea, people.
I mean, this is a dangerous tangent. We can go on for quite a long time, but
Them. It should be burned down. It's bullshit.
I want to bring it back to the book because you talk about the importance of finding tribes and communities that appreciate your brand of weird.
Yeah.
It's not really easy to find them straight away, is it? Like, how often do you find like-minded souls just like that? Because the vanilla and the lavender will find each other very quickly because they smell similar. But weird is just unique in a certain way.
Oh, I know. But when you do, baby, oh, it's so worth it. It's that wonderful thing where you actually see each other and you're like, you're weird? I thought I was the only one, right? That's when you got something good. That's when you got something good. You know, my work with, you had mentioned the Do books, my work with them. I've been working with them for 10 years. I'm constantly waiting for them to bring down the boom and say, no, James, no, we can't print that. But it just keeps going. It just keeps going. And we both grow and get bigger because of it. So yes, those relationships are possibly fewer and far between, but man, they are so rich and so meaningful.
You made me think of something. Weird is often very simple. Weird is actually so easy to understand because you talk about like your book covers for Do books. They are unusual. Like when I look at them, it's like, how did he come up with this? Why does this work? It's two ingredients. It's an illustration, which is very simple, and type, but it works,
Yeah, and the illustration or the image is my little self-inflict assignment with each of them is to do the cliche without doing the cliche, or do the cliche in a completely new way. Because I just can't put a severed, calf's head on a book just because it's funny, right? But I can kind of investigate these ideas, do walk. Like, how do you show something as simple as do walk without showing people walking, right? And to do that, those little legs, I had to draw those multiple times. I'm like, no, that's not it. No, that's not it. No, that's not it. Or do design. And the author of this hated it. He hated it. Luckily, he doesn't have a say. And I have a good reason why I did that thing.
When you see them side by side, it's a part of a set, it's part of a thinking, it's part of a something. But that maybe there's a code language or maybe there's a sort of secretive sort of wave transmission between, people like us.
Do you know what it is?
You just get it. What is it?
All of these. You know what they say? Pick me up. That's it. That's it. That's my job. That's my job. Pick me up. Take a look. I inspire curiosity with them. That's my job. Somebody goes, what? What is that? What is that?
It's not going to be to everyone's taste, but those who are in the similar like-minded category, like you and I and others, you don't have to explain yourself. Like when you say, hey, I'm a bit weird and I like a bit weird things, like when it looks normal, I sort of run away from it. Like you can't, it's just a bit too much. And I think the more I'm thinking about from this conversation, weird, you don't need to explain to someone that you're weird. They will just get it because there's a simplicity of expression. There's like an intelligent person needs to spend a lot of words explaining themselves, like how clever they are. Whereas I feel like when you've got this sort of sixth sense, it's just, hey, this is what I do.
Yeah. What you're talking about is the difference between being and seeming. And to seem means to try. Is to try to be something. And to be is just to, right? Is just to exist. And weird is about being weird, not seeming weird. Like I don't wear pink cowboy shirts to show off. I just like them. I like fluorescent pink and I like fluorescent orange and I put it in my work, But there are people who will wear, crazy clothes and go, hey, I'm weird. I'm like, no, you're actually not weird. You're just wearing purple.
By the way, pink shirts always look good on you. Every time I see you, they look great.
See, there are others who are more in touch with their weird and more brave than I, who can be flamboyant and carry it well, where it is them. That's awesome.
Do you remember Steve Edge?
Exactly who I was thinking about.
Yes.
Because a party might break out at any moment. I lucky to meet him at the Do lectures a couple of years ago.
It's absolutely genius. I want to talk about A Future is Weird. future is weird.
The future had better be weird or we're fucked. Because if we suffer, and we see it in the United States now, we see it suffering from normal. Normal is, give me mine. I want mine. Normal is I'm angry and I'm going to let it out everywhere. That's normal. So yeah, the future is weird or we're screwed.
For your coaching, for your teaching, how difficult is it to find the weird in people? How difficult is it to dial it up? How difficult is it to let them embrace it and say, look, between you and the future, that is somewhat rewarding? What's the ways of holding them back?
There's one word. And it's to get people to allow it in themselves. That's the hard part, right? Because it's in you and it's got to come out. That's the hard part, is to allow it. And you have to let people know that it's, that they're worthy. You have to let people know that the idea of in the particular lies the universal, which means the things you love and the things you fear, Radham, are the things that I love and the things that I fear. So if you can express those things honestly, if you can allow that out honestly and vulnerably, then you will be speaking energetically to me, right? And we will witness each other in a more deeper way. And then that will feed on more, and then that will reach more people, and that will, so that's where the future becomes interesting, where we start to allow our weird to express and radiate out to others.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Especially the word allow, because when you think about it, how often do people stop themselves? I don't want to look weird. I don't want to do this. This is maybe too much. Like, oh, no, not too far.
My dad was a lifelong military, but he was an amateur chef and amateur photographer. He built the house we lived in. I could tell crazy stories about my father. He's no longer around, but when I was finishing FAC, I asked my mom, I said, hey, if you asked Dad if he was creative, would he say he was? She was like, oh, he wouldn't say that. I said, if you asked Dad, could he figure anything out? She'd say, oh, yeah, he could figure anything out. So the idea of creativity scares people. The idea of artist scares people. They're charged words. They're like, oh, those are special things for special people. Or for my dad, it would have been like, oh, were you calling me gay? Right? And he had that. But if you can figure things out, that's a level of creativity. So we're all weird. We're all creative. But whether we can admit it to ourselves and whether we can allow it out and allow it in others, that's a big thing too that is not happening in the United States right now. We're not allowing it in others.
How do you demystify creativity to certain people? How do you just say, well, you're doing it? Like, how many meetings have you sat in and there were people like, hey, I can't draw this. I'm not the creative one. And I'm like, look, I'm blagging in myself too. I'm like, my drawings are even worse than yours, but I'm sitting on this side of the table.
The resistance is so strong. And it's hilarious. And I would start corporate. If I was doing corporate workshops, I'd start it by saying, who here can draw? And then everyone's, oh, Tom from IT, he can draw, like that kind of thing. And then I would take them through literally a 60, 90 second drawing test, right? And then I'd say, okay, guys, show your work to everybody. And the room would just explode with laughter. And they're just like, wow, that's, blah, blah, blah. And I would say, that is what we want. I don't give a fuck if you can draw like Picasso or Michelangelo. That shared humanity. That's what we're shooting for. Laughter.
Well, I always say that I wish as a creative to be as creative as pissed off people with protest placards. Because what you see on those protest placards is, I'm not as funny, I'm not as creative, I don't hit hard as this. When you see people being pissed off, you're like,
it comes from the truth. That's because it comes from the truth. It comes from the heart and their gut and the truth. And it's so much better than marketing.
Exactly. As it says, it comes from the truth and it comes from within. And the way it comes out and it sounds and looks brilliant and it's got an impact. James, thank you very much. I mean, you've dropped so many amazing nuggets of wisdom in this, and I feel like this is to be continued because we've barely touched the surface of your book. The book is out there and everyone should read it.
heyweirdo.org. Easy to find.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your time, and I'm urging everyone to read it because it'll give them a kick up the ass to do something
Yeah, and like I said, the audiobook is coming out and the workbook is going to be available very quickly.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Daring Creativity Podcast. I'd love to know your thoughts, questions, and suggestions. So please get in touch via the email in the show notes or social channels. This episode was produced and presented by me, Radim Malinic. The audio production was done by Neil Mackay from 7 Million Bags Podcast. Thank you, and I hope to see you on the next episode. If you enjoyed this episode and would like more accessible resources to help you discover your daring creativity, you can pick up one of my books on themes of mindful creativity, creative business, branding, and graphic design. Every physical book purchase comes with a free digital bundle including an ebook and audiobook to make the content accessible wherever you are and whatever you do. To get 10% of your order, visit novemberuniverse.co.uk and use the code PODCAST. Have a look around and start living daringly.